everybody. Penny here with Yoga Sizes. Really excited to have Angela Glaz here today. She is an experienced yoga teacher. She also does Ayurvedic consulting, and she's also an NLP practitioner. Thank you again for coming on, and I'm really excited for her to be here, like I said. So we'll start with Angela, if you could just introduce yourself, say where you're from, and how you started with this practice, and how you can incorporate in NLP with Ayurveda into your practice and helping your clients.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Wisconsin, the Midwest, but I've been in Seattle the last 10 years. I have been practicing yoga for about 15 years and teaching for about 12 or 13. I got started by accident. I actually did not want to go to yoga the first time I went. A friend dragged me, and I hated the class because it was the first time I think I had to be aware of my body, and I was left alone with my thoughts. So it was very challenging for me, but I was in college at the time, and I had bought a yoga pass, and I was a poor college student, so I was determined to get my money's worth. So I kept going back to the yoga classes, and then I noticed some shifts and some changes within my body. I actually was diagnosed with depression at a very young age, about 8 years old. So for a lot of my life, I was on medication for depression. And then when I got to college, you add, lots of stress, maybe binge drinking, lack of sleep, right? It just got worse. So I did struggle with a lot of insomnia. And I was noticing that when I went to yoga, I didn't have insomnia. I was able to sleep. So this is just the start of developing my self-awareness. So I just kept going, and and eventually at this, where I was taking yoga classes, the college students taught other college students, and they asked if I wanted to start teaching there. And I kind of did one of these, like looking around me like they're talking to someone else, because I was like, why me? But I ended up doing a little training through them, and I started teaching classes there. And at one point we had a workshop over the weekend where a yoga professor came to talk to us, and she actually studied in India. And so she introduced me more to the philosophy and the 8 limbs of yoga, and it blew my mind. So I decided when I graduated, I was going to go to India, and I did. And then there I was introduced to Ayurveda, which just helped with a lot of other health issues that I was struggling with. And I mean, again, this was over 10 years ago, so Google wasn't what it is today. So I actually had to get books, and I just kept researching it for my own health. And then it just turned into its own business, using the two to help others.
Yeah, those are a good combination to do. Yeah. So you mentioned you had depression, and then that helped you with the insomnia. So you said it was challenging at the beginning. So how do you, what are the different ways that you got over those?
You know what? It's just funny thinking back on it. That's such a good question. And I don't know. I think it was, maybe I'm also a little stubborn. So I think, again, because I didn't want to waste that yoga package, I kept going. And each time I was getting a little more out of it. I was really scared and uncomfortable at first, but the more I did it, just the more comfortable I got. Like anything we do, right? Practice doesn't make perfect, but it gets you used to it.
So you will say that now you pretty much established a daily routine for yoga and getting started with your day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So what's your routine now in terms of preparing for the day, and how long you do your yoga, and how many hours you teach? Do you do online stuff at site, or do you do retreats, things like that?
Yeah. So I did own a yoga studio for the last 3 years, and we just closed this summer. So it was actually a yoga studio that reconnected yoga and Ayurveda. So we taught yoga classes to the doshas to balance them and tried to teach people about their own unique body type. And we unfortunately had to close our doors because we flooded twice. So we flooded once in the first year of business, and we had to rip out all our brand new floors and fix the wall. And it took a long time to fix. And then we like built up our clientele again, and everything was going good. And then they never fixed the problem, and our business flooded again. And then they decided they were going to have to do big renovations on the building. So we had to close our doors. But at that point, I was teaching about 10 to 15 yoga classes a week, which is quite a bit, plus, managing staff and the day-to-day at the studio. So right now I still have the business. We have some online courses. We have a Foundations of Ayurveda course, and then a cultivating balance through Ayurveda and the chakra system. So teaching people how those two connect. So I run those. I have an online membership site. And then I'm teaching some yoga classes at some other local studios. But as far as my morning routine goes, that's very important to me. I feel like I never skip this. I usually get up by 6 a.m., sometimes before, and I will do my tongue scraping, which is an Ayurvedic ritual. I'll do my oil pulling, and while I oil pull, a lot of times I'll do either a short meditation or some journaling. And then, I finish cleaning up, and I rotate. I do maybe 3 to 4 yoga classes a week, and then I also go to the gym. So it's either one or the other. And then, yeah.
Can you go? I'm sorry about the flooding and the situation with the studios.
No worries. It's a good thing I practice yoga. It got me through it.
That helps. So with the tongue scraping and the oil pulling, can you go into deeper? Go in deeper on those, and what are the benefits?
Yeah. So tongue scraping is actually you use, it's kind of a V shape, a soft V shape. You usually want copper or metal rather than plastic, but you take the scraper and you open your mouth and you scrape from the back of your tongue forward, and you'll see on the scraper there'll be the gross stuff on your tongue. In Ayurveda, we call this ama, or toxins that have accumulated from undigested matter in your body overnight. So you'll keep scraping and rinsing after each scrape until your tongue is clean. So yeah, the idea behind that is it can help with halitosis, which causes bad breath, and then it clears off any undigested matter, because digestion is so important in Ayurveda. So whatever we don't digest, if we're letting it, absorb back into our body, it turns into toxins, which can turn into disease. So I'll do that, and then I'll do oil pulling, and I use coconut oil because that tastes better than sesame oil. I'll take a scoop of coconut oil, and Ayurveda says you should swirl it around in your mouth for about 20 minutes. I know that can be a long time for some people. So I usually do, depending on what's going on in the morning, anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes. But I try to do other activities while I'm doing it. There have been times I walk my dog while I'm doing it, and then I'll spit it out when I get home. But again, that's just another way to the oil, because it's a fat soluble, so it will absorb any of those toxins in your mouth, and it actually whitens your teeth. And this is actually a fact. My dentist asked what I was doing because my teeth were so white, and I told her oil pulling, and she's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, it just makes your mouth feel a lot fresher. And then I brush my teeth afterward.
Awesome. In Ayurveda, the doshas, can you go into deeper on that as well, like in terms of doshas? And like, let's just say you have a group class. How can you, everybody's dosha, I mean, each person has like a little bit of each, but some are more than the others. How do you coordinate a class like that? with different types of people?
Right. So at the studio, our classes were actually named Vata balancing, Pitta balancing, Kapha balancing. So people could take the test and figure out what class to go to. But I know it's harder when we go to a general yoga studio, right, teaching to the doshas, because everybody's in every class. So a lot of times what I would do is I would base it more on the season. So the Vata dosha is the elements of air and space. When we see Vata within us in excess, we might feel light or scattered within the mind. We can feel anxious or worried. We can experience bloating, dry skin, dry hair. And seasonally, Vata season is fall, when we see these same qualities within our environment. So perhaps if I was teaching at a general studio, I would do a Vata balancing class, because everybody in fall sees a little more of those Vata qualities within them, whether that's at their dominant body type or not. So I would teach a yoga class that is very grounding, and it still cultivates heat. It allows them to really marinate in their poses and to really bring focus into the mind. We'll also add lots of twists to stimulate the digestive system and release any air or space that's accumulated there. And then Pitta is fire and water, predominantly fire. And Pitta imbalances look like inflammation within the body, so heartburn, acid reflux, acne, rashes. When we have too much Pitta in the mind, we can feel mentally agitated or angered. We can feel controlling. So Pittas really need to cool down. And we see more Pitta in the summer, right? Because there's more fire. So in that class, I would do maybe more of a restorative class, or still using postures that stay close to the earth so they can find some of that stabilizing energy. And just really focusing on the intention of letting go, right? Doing less and just being there more, because Pittas want to control and perfect all of their movement. So having them step away from that for a moment. And then Kapha is earth and water. Kapha imbalances tend to, in the body, look like heaviness, weight gain, oiliness, congestion in the chest, throat, and face. Mentally, Kaphas are more prone to being attached to people, places, and things. So I like to think of earth and water creates mud. So it's this really sticky energy. So yeah, Kaphas get stuck. So maybe like they hate their job, but it's easier to stay there, right? That might be more of a Kapha person. Or when we're experiencing a Kapha imbalance. And we all see more Kapha during the winter and usually the spring months as well, when it's colder, darker, heavier. So in that practice, I would encourage more of a vinyasa style practice where we cultivate heat, and we do a lot, we do a lot to open the heart, because that's where that congestion lies. And then also lots of twists, just because their digestion can be a little more slow and sluggish. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, I love the way you explain everything. Makes it easier to remember. So now I'm thinking in terms of in the content of sorry about the noise in the background. In terms of in relationships, what if they're like a friendship or in a type of any relationship wise, people or a group of people, they're so different. Like, how do you let them be more harmonized?
It's so funny. I feel like I need my next online course or workshop is going to be on this, because I've been getting this question so much. I guess to sum it up would be, I think it's important for everybody to read about all of the doshas and their qualities and their personality type, because when we can understand if someone's one dosha or the other, we can better relate to them. So for example, those that are Pitta dominant, again, the fire, they tend to be very direct with their language. And when they're very direct, they can sound to a Vata person who is a little more creative and flowing, can be a little more sensitive, that might hurt their feelings. They might think a Pitta person is being mean, but they're not. That's just how they're talking. And then vice versa, Vatas tend to be more creative and flowy. So when they're trying to tell you something, they tend to create this giant story instead of getting to the point. So a Pitta person would be like, oh my gosh, get to the point, and can get irritated and frustrated. But if they can respect, like, okay, this is how this person communicates, right? It gets easier to take in that information and to relate. Does that make sense? So I think it's, just understanding the qualities of each dosha, and also just each of us having our own self-awareness too, like noticing, if you're talking to someone and if they're not paying attention, or you see them feeling irritated, you can adjust your language.
That also needs a lot of compromise and work together.
Right.
And I'm thinking, like, for those that don't even know about this, how they would approach it. I guess they have to try different ways without, like, because sometimes without knowing different ways, modalities to manage certain things, or the reason behind it, then it's going to be harder to tackle.
Right. And I know there's, like, a lot of companies now use the Myers-Briggs test, which is essentially like the dosha test in Ayurveda is like the very first Myers-Briggs personality test ever created. And I think the doshas are a lot simpler than, understanding the Myers-Briggs. So it's just these basic qualities, recognizing if someone is direct with their language and not being offended by that, or if someone takes slower to respond. Just, again, respecting each person as an individual is what it really breaks down to.
Okay. Yeah. So NLP, how do you add that into the mix?
Yeah, this was just really helpful because NLP teaches us really how our minds work, right? And it comes back down to really cultivating self-awareness and looking at ourselves from an outside perspective. So I use this in my consultations or coaching when people have habits or trying to improve their health, right? All of it starts with our mind. So if we can retrain the mind, we can shift into some healthier habits. So I'll incorporate some of that, or exercises I've learned from that too. That's a lot of times the first step, right? Because when someone is trying to improve their health and they have what can be big hurdles or seem like big hurdles ahead of them, right? We can't do any of the fixing, like physically, until we do the fixing in the mind.
So what are some of the specific hurdles, like examples?
That some people experience?
Yeah.
I think one that I see a lot is people get really defensive. So they know that their health isn't good, but I've heard this like 100 times. They always say, I really don't eat that bad. I really don't eat that bad. And so that's a perspective, because each of our body types need something different. But it's more when they say that, it's a defense mechanism because they know that they are eating bad, or, they're cheating. I guess they're cheating and saying that, well, I only did it this once, but then I did it yesterday, and then I did it today and the next day. So it all adds up. So getting over that defense that they have, right? Whatever it is. And that's just one example, but a lot of times it's defensive, where they're there because they want to change, but at the same time, they're stuck somewhere in their mind thinking that they don't need to change.
That's true. What are some of the challenges that you've been through over the years for your own practice and in your business?
Yeah. So like physical challenge, like physical health, you mean, or mental?
Physical, mental,
Okay.
any, yeah.
Um, well, I think the physical would be mostly the depression and then just general digestive issues. And then mental, I mean, there's been a lot of things with the way I grew up. And then when I started a business, starting a business on your own, that's a huge, it plays with your mind every day. There's so many highs and lows. And then again, like I mentioned, the flooding. So adding that kind of stress on top of it, it was really, there was a lot of hard days. And so I had to really hone in on my yoga practice. I had to really make sure, you know, when we get sad or depressed, I mean, I am first to admit that I want to go straight for the cookies and lay on the couch and watch Netflix. So it's that practice of being disciplined and knowing that that's not going to always make me feel better. So when I could find the strength, you know, continuing to eat healthy meals, to continuing to meditate and get exercise.
Besides the physical and the mental work that you do to make yourself feel better, and do you use like other things like essential oils or yeah, other things that you use in your practice?
Yeah, I'm a regular incense burner. I have essential oils. I make a lot of my own remedies. At the studio, I made sprays for each of the doshas using essential oils. So like the kapha, because they tend to be heavier, was very uplifting and energizing. The pitta, because they're more fiery and hold that heat, it was more a relaxing and cooling scent. And then vata, because they tend to be more airy, it was a very grounding and warming scent. So I still make those for myself and I have them at home. I like being outside a lot. So my husband and I bike ride and hike quite a bit. And I have a dog, so she makes me go outside a lot.
They're great companions.
They are.
Awesome. So for like in terms of so what are your plans in terms of, you say you have courses, right, coming up, or you have courses online already?
Correct. Yeah.
You have that practice, you know, your routine to help you to keep up with everything.
Yeah. Do
Well,
you have a morning routine?
it's getting better. Yeah, I started doing at least 30 minutes of yoga in the morning, but it's challenging with my 2-year-old like trying to
Oh, yeah.
step on me and everything,
Yeah.
but I still try to get it done.
I can't even imagine. I know how the dog gets with when I do yoga at home too. She's like sitting on my hand and then under the body.
They're very intuitive. They want to be
They
participating. And
do.
how do people find you, your sites, yours on social media and what?
Yeah. Well, my website is EKA, yoga and Ayurveda.com. And then you can find me on social media. Eka has an Instagram handle and I have my own personal one. Eka's is Eka_yoga_Ayurveda. And then mine is just Ayurvedic Angela.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Last, before this session ends, is there any one specific important reminders or lesson that you'll like us and listeners to learn from this whole lifestyle?
I would say the easiest thing to start with and can make such a huge difference is, again, in the morning, before you do anything, take 2 minutes to sit. And if you don't know what to do with that time, just start to list things you're thankful for, whether you're saying them out loud or maybe you write them in a journal, and just, you know, get in that state of gratitude so you start your day off on the right foot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.